Welcome everybody to the PMO Global Awards event. This is kind of an interesting event. My first time being part of it, and I'm kind of excited to be a host here to ask some questions of Kevin Dixon, who is a candidate for the award for leader of the PMO Leader of the Year award, Kevin. And that certainly sounds exciting to me. I'm sure that the entire event's going to be very interesting for everyone that's involved in PMOs. But what I'd like to do, just to get started, I'm going to introduce myself really quick, and I'm going to turn it over to Kevin to give an introduction. But my name is Frank Saladis, and I've been a member of PMI basically since 1990, and I've done a number of different things with PMI. New York City chapter president, chair of the Education Specific Interest Group, and I picked up a few awards from PMI back in 2006. I was given the award of Person of the Year, and then I achieved the PMI Fellow in 2013 and was awarded the Distinguished Contribution in 2015. So I'm proud of all of those awards and the accomplishments and my time with PMI. I know that many of you are PMI members or IPMA members or members of other project management organizations, and it's really my privilege to be here. So I thought do a quick introduction and let you know I've been around for a while. I have a PMP, and I've been working in project management for quite a few years and doing a lot of training and having fun with it. So, and this interview is actually going to be one of those fun events that we like to do. So with that, Kevin, I'd like to maybe if you can introduce yourself and tell us just a little bit about your background and how you got to be where you are today as a candidate for a PMO Leader of the Year.
Thanks, Frank. My name is Kevin Dixon. I'm the PMO leader for the Fluid Systems Division, part of Parker Aerospace. And to be honest, I don't know what I did to become honored by the PMO Global organization. I'm honestly humbled and really honored to be part of this. It was very nice to be nominated and considered and make it to the finals. As far as my background, I'm probably like most project managers that are out there today. I didn't choose to become a project manager when I was in college and say, hey, let's go lead other people in a cross-functional project. I was an accidental project manager like probably most of us. I started out as an engineer at Kennedy Space Center. I was working in the ground operations group, and one day somebody needed a person who could talk to others to lead a small project, to work on some equipment, get it done, in order for us to return to launch. This was shortly after the Columbia tragedy. And they needed status. They needed somebody to pull things together. So I was titled as an engineer, and I actually was a project leader and didn't even know it. And that didn't occur to me until about 10 years later, when after successively gaining experience and more responsibility, leading small projects, things like that, I actually joined the formal Space Shuttle Program Management Office. So I applied finally after almost 10 years to be a project manager, and I became what was called a subsystem program manager. I managed all the electrical systems on the solid rocket boosters for the shuttle program. That was my first official job in project management. From there, I kind of grew and did a whole bunch of different things, everything in engineering, from working on ground operations to sitting on the launch control as a communications lead engineer. And then into project and program management, and really started to cut my teeth when we started to take on new things. When shuttle began its swing down in retirement, we started to develop new rockets, new vehicles, and so I led some avionics teams as a program manager. And then I was recruited to go join a totally different place. There was a small company out in California, needed some help developing a landing system for the new Orion spacecraft. So I took that role. Then it led me to Parker, where they needed someone to be a program manager. And then after a little while doing that, I was tapped on the shoulder and asked to lead the PMO, and been doing that probably for the past 8 years now. It's been a great experience. The one thing that I enjoy the most is just bringing all of my experience and the little tips and tricks that I've learned over all those years, try and explain, how to leverage that knowledge and get my project and program managers to work more seamlessly with other teams and to get things done a little more efficiently. So try to bring value wherever I can, and we've been doing pretty well at it. It's quite an enjoyable profession.
Okay, well, all of the things that you talked about, well, kind of lead me in a specific direction in terms of learning a little bit more about PMOs and so on. But you mentioned right up front, just at the beginning, accidental project manager. And you said that, I didn't even know I was a project manager. And all of a sudden, there I was doing this work. I have I guess it's my opinion that everyone has managed projects sometime in their lives. Okay, whether you're in grammar school, high school, college, going to universities, there was some kind of a project that you had to work on. If you own a home, you worked on projects. So everyone is some type of project manager. Some become better at it than others. Some are just adapt to it. And it's just to me, there's a natural skill that not everybody can be an excellent project manager. At least I don't think so. I mean, there's a lot of training and so on, but I think that there's something about each individual that becomes a project manager that it just drives them forward. So. What I want to ask you a question. I was just speaking to someone just this afternoon, as a matter of fact, about this, and this is the progression from moving forward as a project manager from going up the ladder. That there is an unwritten progression that you become like an apprentice project manager, an assistant project manager, and then you become a project manager. And then if you really are giving a great performance in terms of getting things done and it's really helping the organization and you're managing multiple projects pretty well, you become a program manager. And then at the program manager level, once you've been working on some really complex programs, you become a portfolio manager. I mean, kind of like in that order. So in your experience, going back to the beginning and kind of progressing through, and you are at the PMO level, so you're director of a PMO. Does that progression make sense? Is that something that people strive for?
Absolutely, and the truth is that's how our company, our organization has the program management function structured. We start someone out at an entry level with a project role, right? They are a contributor. They can become officially either a scheduler, we call it a program planning and control analyst, which is basically either a scheduling expert or a pricing or cost analyst, a business analyst type role. And they start sort of as a deputy project manager or an assistant to the project manager, helping to coordinate things, schedules, meetings, things like that, to see sort of from the side how you would lead a project. And then those folks typically roll into a project leader, a project manager role. And then as you just said, right, we give them multiple projects, and the more that they can take on, the more they can balance and lead, then we realize that they're going to, be able to take on that program management role. And the differentiator for us is, project management is very tactical. It's very well-defined. There's not a lot of ambiguity. Whereas the program management role, there's a little bit of gray area. And so we need the leaders that are able to be a little more adaptable, that can think strategically and grow into that role. And once they've had the experience of being a program manager for a number of years, we will put them in charge of other program managers, which is typically where that PMO manager or director role comes out of. And that's exactly what I do. We even have a VP of program management within our company who leads the function at an executive level. So, our company has got a pretty long runway, not just because it's Parker Aerospace, but because we have that good breadth of career pathing for the entire function.
Okay, and that's actually one of the questions. Before we were contacted to actually have this particular interview, I was trying to come up with the kind of questions that you would ask a PMO director, and I've got quite a few. We probably won't have time to get through all the questions, but I really did want to understand a little bit about that progression, and I think that most people agree that you might be that assistant or associate project manager, then you're a project manager, then you're a program manager, and then you kind of go up the ladder there in the world of project management. I'm going to guess that the PMO director and portfolio managers are working very, very closely together, assisting with the planning out the strategy and what projects should be worked on. Well, here's a question regarding the PMOs. Now, in the PMBOK guide, PMI's PMBOK guide, there are 3 types of PMO structures. Now, I don't know if that's truly official. That's what's in the standard, but there is what they call a supportive PMO, and that particular PMO type is responsible for developing methods and procedures and policies and training and providing whatever support that they can to the project managers in the field, but they don't have any actual control over the project. Okay, and then when we have the controlling PMO, and this is a step up in terms of overall control, because in this particular type of PMO, not only are you developing the methods that you want to standardize throughout the entire organization, but you want to make sure that people are actually using the methods that you have developed. So you go out there and you audit and you check with the project managers, are you doing these things? And if not, we're going to instruct you on how to do it. And then there's the other one, which is a directive PMO, and that means that not only are you creating all these methods and procedures and policies, but you are also managing, or the PMO is directly responsible or involved in the management and control and implementation of the projects. So where do you fit into there? Are you supportive, controlling, directive, some combination?
So that's a great question. So what I would say is my organization on paper is designed to be a supportive PMO. And I think that probably 7 years ago when I started in my role, that's where it was. We pretty much were confined to a smaller box where we wrote procedures, provided access to tools, basically trained people, did all those supportive functions. And over time, I would say that one of the best things you can do as a PMO director or a leader of a PMO organization is to show value. And as you do that, over those past 7-8 years that I've worked in my organization, we've shifted from that totally supportive PMO to a far more influential PMO. We don't own resources. We don't actually make the decisions on the programs as regard to their business direction, but we strongly influence both the leadership and the organization in how we should execute things. Many of the leaders now come to me asking, that we collaborate on who should be that next program manager on the next endeavor. When we're looking at new business opportunities, I sit within the review panel and we take a look at it together and we collaborate. So we've really moved our organization from being one of those support functions that really kind of looks up at the business and says, we're here to help you and provide tools and guidance, to actually helping to collaborate together with the business leadership as well as the functional teams. I don't look at our PMO as just a core team of people that have the title. I look at our PMO as everybody that touches the projects. And if you're, a quality engineer that's involved in an IPT, you're part of the PMO. And you need to understand the terminology, the tools, and have the training and understand how all the other pieces work and work with the project manager. So I think we've shifted over time from being fully supportive to a far more engaged and I think more of a hybrid organization.
Yeah, I think that the supportive type of PMO, the ones that creates the templates and the procedures and the policies and all of that, that's probably the more challenging of the PMOs to get started. And maybe they progress from supportive to controlling to directive. But in my experience in dealing with people who are doing a startup of PMOs, okay, somebody in the organization says, you know what, this sounds like a good idea. Other organizations are doing it. Maybe we should try it. Okay, maybe we can get something together, get some standardization about how we manage our projects and programs and so on. So let's start a PMO. And what they find early on is that not everybody buys into that. Okay, they say, well, we're creating another position. It's going to have to be staffed. We need those resources to work on our projects. What do we need another group of people to tell us what to do? Right. And you get immediate resistance. I mean, it just seems to be the case. And the people that I've spoken to that start up the PMOs, and they ask, Frank, What do you recommend? I mean, how do we get things going so that we can survive? And you said it just a minute ago. You said you're going to have to find a way to add value, and you're going to have to demonstrate that value really quickly.
Yes.
So my suggestion to them was, if you need to take a look at your base case. Where are you now in terms of overall project performance, right? And I'm talking about on schedule, budget, meeting customer requirements, customer satisfaction, employee teamwork. I'm talking about all of that.
Tangible.
But, right, you got to have these tangible metrics, right? And you have to say, well, here's where we're at now. And then you as a PMO, if you're going to succeed and you get those stakeholders out there that are really kind of questioning, why you're having it, within a few months, you're going to have to show that you've moved the bar up, that we've gone from here to there. Look what we've done with your with the PMO. So how do you address that? I mean, in terms of value, what are some of the things that you focused on to get the attention of executives who may not be that supportive of having a PMO in the first place? What do you do?
Well, so I think the best thing you can do is find out what the organization needs, right? Some of the things I did were talk to the business leaders. I remember the first 90 days I had the role that I'm in now. I went out and met with every business leader, every business unit leader we had, sat down with them, and I said, what are your problems? Where are you struggling? What can we do to help you? And I took their feedback and I sat and thought about what strategies could we implement to actually help? Because if you walk into an organization and you tell them, I don't know all the answers, but we might have some tools or some techniques from the standards that will help solve some of these problems. Just because you name yourself a PMO doesn't mean you're going to fix everything. But if you come in and you ask those leading questions of what troubles you today, is it execution? Are you late all the time? Is it cost overruns? Do you have problems? Look for the problems. Look for, our boss, our VP of program management often says, look for the burning platform, right? So I will look for problems and see if we can help. And we had issues that obviously a program management is keen for. We had cost overrun issues. We had schedule issues. A lot of people know that if you just execute and you follow those things with well-defined scope and all the right tools in place, you can actually limit the damage of not having someone manage it. So, we've moved from an organization that was very ad hoc to, I have business leaders now that are saying things like, in our experience, program management more than pays for itself. So when I go back to the organization and say, you know what, we need another program manager for some new business we have, people do listen and they take value in, well, we probably should get that support and put those people in place because it's going to pay for itself. So I think, like you said, the best thing you can do is, figure out how to add value. And that means early wins quickly. So what you want to do is, I would say, a new leader should get out there and survey the organization, find out what landscape looks like, and see where you can actually make a difference, because there are going to be business leaders that you're going to want to get their support. What you need really is air cover. What I always say is air cover is, that sponsor that PMI always points to.
Oh, yeah.
You have a sponsor for your project. Well, a PMI needs an executive that's going to be your champion. You need somebody up there that says, I have a problem and I think you can help. And if you come through for that executive and you're able to solve some of those problems, you've now made a friend in literally a high place that will help make sure the PMO gets some traction. And you just take it from there. You can't win all the battles. You can't convince everyone that the PMO is the right move. But if you're able to go out there and find one or two individuals that you can bring on board and help, then you get some sponsors, some champions, and you build momentum from there. But like you said, I think you have to show value and establish early wins as soon as you can.
Yeah, and talking about the value, and you mentioned something really, really critical here, and that is you have to have visible executive support for the PMO to get things going. Okay, I mean, and that really should be someone that is in a very influential position that people will listen to. Okay, so you need to get someone who really sees the value in standardizing, procedures and process and methods for projects and programs at the enterprise level. I think that that's the key, is that executive support. The other thing you mentioned was needs analysis. Got to do that needs analysis. You got to ask people what's going on. Now, I don't know if I'm going to put you on the spot with this or not, but I have to, based on my experience anyway, and probably other people that I've spoken to, that people are not necessarily going to tell you what their problems are. They go, "Oh, everything is in pretty good shape." They don't necessarily want to tell a person who's starting up a new position, all their problems. So what's your approach to get people to be honest and say, I'm having some trouble here with my schedules. I'm having trouble with my resource planning. Risk seems to be an issue. How do you address that so that they trust you that you're going to do the right thing for them?
Well, you're right, because in my experience, I went to multiple managers and I did actually get feedback across the spectrum. I had everything from, the building's on fire, there's nothing we can do, everything's terrible. It depends on who you're talking to. And then I heard things like, "Oh, everything's fine here. I don't think you can really help." So you're right. You're going to get a various degree of different answers from who you talk to. What I would say is find the source of truth for data, and whatever metrics you can get your hands on as far as performance or business, sales, returns, profitability, find that data and analyze it yourself and take a look at it and see if the business is actually delivering the value, right? You want to take a look at benefits management. Is the organization actually managing their benefits and delivering value from their projects and programs, right? If they're not, that's your business case to show you need a PMO, right? You can go back to the organization and say, "Listen, you guys had a plan for this wonderful new product. Either you didn't execute the project itself and it didn't turn out the way you planned, or whatever the case may be." But I think even if you don't get that executive engagement where they're telling you what they're worried about, there's a lot of psychology involved where you can ask probing questions and get that data out of them. But if you can't really bridge that gap with somebody and develop rapport and get them to open up, the best thing you can do is look for the data yourself. Find the source of truth for the business. If it's a for-profit business, look at profitability, find out how they're doing. Could they do better? And if it's a some type of a organization that delivers a service, a nonprofit, find out if, like you said, there's customer satisfaction indices, there's effectiveness, all kinds of ratings you could use to get data and establish a baseline of what the organization is doing today, and then propose, hey, you know what? This is a little bit of a chance if you're a PMO director, but you can go out there and say, "Hey, we're going to try some things and let's see if this metric improves." If it doesn't, either, sure, you don't need a PMO, or we're doing something wrong. But typically, if you follow that process, you're going to see improvement. And I think that the answer is, if you can't get that cooperation, honestly, without air cover, without executive support, you have a very difficult uphill climb. You do need to make a business case. And to be honest, not all organizations need a full-blown PMO. So I've never met an organization that is everything's hunky-dory and we're doing really nothing couldn't improve. But you might get feedback like that from certain executives or certain managers. That's for sure. I agree.
Yeah, I think that the one of the keys to a successful startup of a PMO is to gain the trust of the people that you're actually going to be serving. And I know this kind of leads into another challenge of the PMOs. There is a perception out there amongst the non-PMO folks that, "Oh no, okay, now we have a PMO, they're going to inundate us with administration, that we're going to have all these forms and new policies and procedures and methods and tools and so on. It's going to bog our project managers down, and we're not going to get the things done that we need to get done." And I've heard that from lots and lots of places, that especially for PMOs that didn't make it, that they failed. Okay, that there's just so much administration that the management the people that the project managers reported to, or the people working on projects, they were getting frustrated by the amount of administrative work that a PM project manager has to do because of the procedures and policies established by a PMO. A friend of mine and I, years ago, walking up the street in New York City to a meeting, we were talking about PMOs, and we came up with this phrase, and I think people have used this before, called PM Light. In other words, let's just use what we have to use. So, in your opinion, first of all, is it really something that's out there that some PMOs are just inundating with way too much administrative work and forms to fill out and reports and status and things like that? And where's the happy medium? What do you need? And what would your recommendation be to people that are saying, hey, I'm listening to this and I have a PMO and maybe I'm overdoing it with administration, but how do you deal with that?
Well, you can choke someone to death on paper. That's for sure. I mean, I worked in the government for a while. I used to say that the only way we would get back to the moon was by stacking all the paperwork up.
that would get you there too, I would imagine.
Yeah, it would. With the government programs, it could. So I'm used to seeing that level of engagement. Now, one thing that I was real happy about was that the PMBOK standard was revised recently, and part of that was discussion on, tailoring, right?
Yes, definitely.
Recent version, it said, you have to do everything in here. That's not true. Some organizations are, risk averse, some are not. It depends, like I said, on your landscape of what you need. PMO directors or leaders need to think of themselves almost as a physician. You're writing a prescription for an organization, which is like a body. And if you give it too much medicine, you can do just as much damage as you could healing. And so I think the answer is you've got to find what suits the organization best and what will leverage, by adding. You're adding burden. As soon as you implement a process or one piece of paper, you've now added a task that somebody didn't have to do before.
Right.
You have to look at it and say, well, is this going to give me a return that's more than the investment? That's all it's about. So even in my organization, we don't do everything in the PMBOK. We purposefully chose to tailor some things out. And even from one division to another, you'll see some differences. And it's based on what we think we need. And the truth is, you don't have to have the right answer on day one. A good friend of mine who works in aerospace told me once, you can think about what the right answer is for 6 months, but if you just try one now, you'll know a lot sooner which one's wrong. So I think the answer is, probably to start out small. It's a lot like, boiling the frog.
Yeah.
You want to come into an organization and certainly don't shock the system by prescribing, an inundative number of processes and new paper and all these extra things they're going to have to do, because you're just going to get a brick wall. The people that might have been on the fence are going to not be on your side. I think if you come into an organization and you look at what they're already doing, and you look at just a few things you can do to help them improve, focus on those, like I said, and get those early wins in, right? They'll see you're returning value. If you walk into an organization, they don't have a schedule put together on their project, right? That's an easy one. You're not going to prescribe them, oh, I need you to document your changes or put a risk category together of everything that's a risk for this project if they don't have a schedule, right? You've got to start with the core, really important things and work your way out. So I think that's the answer, is you absolutely need to tailor for what the organization needs.
Yeah, I think that's really, really important. You brought up a couple of things, and I just want to review a couple of items. Number one, you got to have executive support, right? That's really key. You also mentioned something I don't think I've actually heard anybody talk about it before, but and it does make sense. You need to have a PMO business case. You got to have some rationale as to why a business case is a PMO is going to work for the organization. Kind of like new projects are coming in, the portfolio manager has to review them and give me your business case and tell me why this is beneficial. You also said we have to make sure that there's value in the PMO. Okay, and we have to prove that. And you're going to have to use metrics in which to do that. You're going to have to show that the bar keeps moving and that it's not we're not just consuming resources here, but we're actually providing benefit. And you mentioned benefit, and we need to figure that out in a way of what we'll call cost-benefit analysis for a PMO. in the business case, you're going to have to project that, but you're also going to have to kind of review that as the PMO evolves and progresses and so on, because you really have to stay on top of the value, continuously adding value and benefit to the organization. And then you also mentioned one more thing, core project management, procedures, processes, skills, knowledge. I think that those are all the essentials just to get things launched. So now here you are, you're the director of a PMO, right? And you're here at the PMO, Global Awards. So you had to do something special, right? So I had listed a bunch of questions to ask. I'm not sure we're not going to get to all these questions, but and this is my second question actually on my list. But what is it that differentiates your PMO from other PMOs, that it's so successful and it's been so accepted? What's the differentiating factors there that make it unique?
So I'd probably say there are really two things that make us different from, when I have conversations with other PMO leaders, there's really two things I can think of, right? And number one is a lot of them look at it as, hey, I'm just a supportive PMO, and that's my lot in life, and I'll do whatever I can. And the answer is that's not your lot in life. You have to influence. You've got to get out there, and you have to, I went and in person visited every business leader I could within 90 days. I sat with them. I discussed problems. I interviewed them. I needed to dig up the data of where I could bring value to the organization. So I think the answer is you have to use influencing as a PMO leader as probably your best skill. Because if you don't, you're not going to be able to implement these tools. You're not going to be able to roll out policies and have anyone adhere to them. And you're certainly not going to get the PM community on board if you introduce or do anything new. We typically have rolled out tool after tool every year to try and kind of raise the bar for our PMO. So we, 7-8 years ago, I walked in, we had projects and programs that had one cost collection bucket for all of the costs. So we went from that level of maturity to now we're probably what I would say is not quite government earned value, but we're using control accounts. We've got good definition. We're involved in the project proposals. So, it's influencing and it's gradual over time. You're not going to have a big battle where you win and you take away and say, hey, we are now the best PMO in the world. It's just like football. It's a game of inches. So number one is get out there and influence. It's, you have to take every little inch that you can and keep pushing. It's constant. And I think the second thing is realize that the PMO doesn't have this, black line drawn around it of individuals that are either in the PMO or not in the PMO. If you act that way and you have that boundary of we're in the PMO and you're not, it creates issues where you're going to not get cooperation, number one, from the other people that are, out of the PMO. And the other part is you want to involve as many people as you can. If you're taking on an initiative or you're rolling out a tool, and you never know, you might get somebody in an adjacent function who thinks that it might do them some good where you weren't applying it in the first place. We rolled out some resource management tools and we had an early adopter from a place I would have never thought of. And that early adopter then championed it across our division and helped us to roll the tool out. And we lean on that person regularly. So I think the answer is, the second part to that is don't draw a hard line around the PMO. Define your PMO as the part of the organization. It's an integral part. It would be like asking someone to take the heart out of the body, right? The PMO is not just the heart. It's the veins and the arteries and everything that goes through the body to keep the organization healthy and to keep it progressing and growing. And I think that's the approach that maybe differentiated us a little bit was, we felt like even though you're in engineering or you're in quality or you're in contracts, you're part of the PMO, you're part of the IPT team, the integrated product team, and therefore you're a member of the PMO. So I think, inclusion is a very helpful tool. And I think the influencing is a skill that as a leader, you're going to have to develop so that you can get buy-in, you can roll those tools out, and you can actually get people on board.
Okay, so inclusion and influence, some key factors there in getting it going, but keeping it going. You have to continue to do that. It's something that's going to go on pretty much continuously. Something I just made a note as you were speaking, and I'm not aware that this exists. Maybe it does, but you mentioned PMO maturity. Is there out there somewhere? Maybe you have it in your own organization. Just like we have the capability management maturity model and things like
Yes.
that, we also have a portfolio management maturity model. Is there a PMO management maturity model that you follow or that you use internally that you may have created? If what would be in it?
We
What would be
do.
in it? Yeah.
Actually, we do, and it came up from. I'm one of the members of what's called the Program Management Leadership Council at Parker Aerospace.
Ah,
VP is the chair of that organization, and that team collectively came up with a method, I believe, strongly influenced from maybe another organization, where we adopted it was almost like a CMMI rating scale,
okay.
maturity across, and we leaned on, the knowledge areas of the PMBOK, and we said, well, let's look at the knowledge areas for PMBOK, and let's try to rate ourselves in each area year over year and see how we're doing. And so we developed that pretty early on as a metric and a measuring stick for our organization. And it's not just my team. We measure all the teams by the same yardstick. And year over year, we try to just push those things. The funny thing is that our goal is not to be at the top of the scale. Our goal is to be mid to high level. We don't really feel like we'll ever be perfect, but our goal is to actually just make a difference in the organization and show that program management and good program management is actually a business benefit, and it's a differentiator. It's something that maybe Parker Aerospace, our organization, does a little better than everybody else, and therefore we bring more value as an organization to our customer.
Okay, and I think that's really important. So, like I said, I'm not sure if there is some standardized management maturity model for PMOs, but there's lots and lots of information. I know that people have written books about PMOs, and I've a few of those books, and they do cover a lot of the things that you mentioned. The influence part, making sure that we've got the right kind of skill set available, that we are out there building confidence, we're adding benefit and value. I mean, all those different things are key points in developing and moving a PMO forward. So let me ask you this. This is one of my questions that I had jotted down. Is how significant is the PMO in strategic planning? Okay, so you got the organization kind of looking out into the future, and maybe today's strategic planning is not quite the way it used to be years ago. When I worked at AT&T for a number of years, and strategic planning was like a 1-3-5 kind of approach, right? But today, things are moving really, really fast, and from what I've read and people that I've talked to, that the strategic planning now is much, I guess, closer. We're not looking 5 years out. We're looking maybe 1, 2, 3 years at the most because of such technology advances and things like that. So from your perspective, how are you involved in strategic planning? Do they come to you and knock on your door and say, hey, we need this as we develop our plans for the future? What's going on? So how do you fit into the strategic side of the business?
So that's a good question. And within my organization, when strategic planning does happen, I'm sort of tapped on the shoulder as far as the functional leader. So when we're thinking about, changes to the business, typically I fall into that, what is the function going to need to do? Or how can we change things within the function to adapt to new business environments? As an example, one of the more recent and probably very tangible things to everybody is the environment from the COVID pandemic. Part of that was, our organization as an aerospace company was very heavily affected by this pandemic. And so part of the planning was, what is our organization going to look like? Our team got together and said, what can we do differently tomorrow or over time that, will help our business to evolve and adapt to this new environment? That we can influence. And so our team, again, our council got together and discussed it. And we talked about some ideas for initiatives. We talked about ideas for changing policies, procedures, how we actually approach things. Topics such as, do we want to have a center of excellence, or do we want to, group our resources together? Do we want to pull them back? Do we want to isolate them and put them in business units? Those types of discussions, do happen across the function. And so that's the functional part. The other part is within the business, there's normal business planning. And so, some of my analysts are, directly responsible for developing all the data and gathering the data that feeds the business so that our business leaders can actually make decisions. Part of it is, how much have we spent? What are the sales going to be? So those were the employees that are part of the PMO that are analysts that are providing that data. So, not only do we have the discussions about, strategy, but we're actually involved in, going out in the field, I guess you'd say, and picking up the tangible pieces of data that feed the decisions that our business leaders do need to make. So I think PMO is an integral function in strategy, and it comes in those two areas. One is the tactical, where we're getting the data for the leadership, and the second part are the leadership discussions that do involve the functions.
Okay, and you mentioned the data. Okay, for the past many years, I'm going to go back a little bit. There was a lot of emphasis placed on gathering data for an organization, and they actually called it metadata. Let's get all this data about all these different things and kind of pile it up together, and we're going to give it to the executives. And what was happening is that the executives were getting a ton of data, stacks of it. And they were saying, well, what am I going to do with this? I mean, I can't analyze all of this. We need to take this big data and turn it into something that's more actionable. Okay, so if we look at that from the PMO perspective, what is the data that you are providing? Okay, because when we're talking about data from a PMO, we're talking about project data that will help them to determine the direction they're going to go in terms of products and services, customer satisfaction, employee engagement, use of contractors, and things like that. So what data do you provide that gives the executives the insight to take the appropriate executive action and develop the appropriate strategies to stay ahead of the game in business?
Well, I mean, I think it's probably part of what most, I'd say, mid-level to lower maturity PMOs do, which would be resource demand, right, from all. Okay. That's an area where I think it's really important to feed the business so that they know what assets they're going to need to get their projects and programs done. And the other part is the data that the cost data that we pull from the accounting team, but we also bring in the element from the PMO. We use earned value management. So I think it's also the efficiency data. Right? How are we doing versus what we thought we were going to do? And most of that, like you said, that's a ton of data. So we try to distill it down to, for our executives, where's this program going? And what that means is you've got to take a look at the EVM data, and you have to do, either as the PMO leader or as the program manager, take a look at the data and say, where's my program headed? Am I going to be within my budget? Am I going to blow my budget? Am I going to need more resources? And am I going to overspend? Those are things business leaders have to know to operate today, especially in the environment we have today. Things are very competitive. So I think our PMO provides data on the direction of our programs, their health, and then the resources that we need to execute all the work that we have. Those are really the critical things that I think are core to a PMO that you have to realize as a PMO leader. If you're not delivering that, it's going to be very hard to do much of anything else in the strategy realm or in the influencing realm. You've got to get that core functionality set up and healthy. And if your projects and programs are off track, right, that's the data that you need to bring in with a recommendation of what do we need to do to get back and get healthy again. So I think as far as data goes, you don't want to inundate the leaders with, look at my SPI, look at my CPI, look at my cost variances. All they really want to know is, are you going to do what you said you were going to do, when you're going to do it, and for how much you said?
Right.
And if there's a variance to that answer, you need to be able to understand it and give a recommendation on what you can do to fix it.
Yeah, recommendation is key. You're not telling them what to do, but giving a recommendation and basically interpreting the data, bringing it down so that they have it kind of in a nutshell. I know that's not easy to do in today's environment. the dashboard is a popular way to get information to your executives. And a colleague of mine, Dr. Harold Kersner, wrote a book about KPIs, metrics, and dashboards. And he mentioned in that book that you should be able to create a dashboard that will give an executive the status of a project within 7 seconds. In other words, you should flash the information up on a screen or a presentation, and they look at it and go, "Yep, that's good, but I have a problem with that. Tell me about that." So it is making sure that we've condensed the data down to it's usable for them, so that they can make the appropriate decisions going forward in terms of, like you said, resources, cost, products and services that you're going to deliver. What's been successful, and of course, all that customer feedback. Now, we have about maybe 10 minutes left. One of the things, and this might help us kind of summarize all the things that we've talked about, and most project managers, program managers, people in the project management arena are always talking about critical success factors, okay? And I have a different take on critical success factors, right? When you ask someone, tell me about your critical success factors, and they go, "Oh, we got to be on time, or we got to be on budget, we got to have the right scope, we have customer requirements." And I say, well, I mean, they were all important, but they're not really critical success factors. Those are measurements, okay? Factors to me are different. So I'm going to bounce these off you, and you tell me what you think, and then add to it. But to me, especially if you're in a PMO environment, the critical success factors would be, number one, as you mentioned earlier, you got to have executive support that is visible and strong and consistent. That to me is one. Number two, you need to have a very good leader of the PMO that understands project and program management, that understands the balance between management and leadership in order to get things done. Number three, that the leader needs to have some business savvy, information. In other words, I understand how my business is running and what's important to the business. And number four would be, I got to have qualified people that are going to help me support the type of programs. I got to have the right infrastructure. Those to me are critical success factors for a PMO, and they're not on time, within budget, and all that. I understand that at the project level, but let's separate KPIs from critical success factors, because to me they're different. So what's your take on that, and what would you add to that?
Well, I would agree. I think I started out early saying, you have to have air cover as a PMO. So you're going to need at least one sponsor that's, at a level that they can influence the organization or preferably direct the organization, right? The PMO, if you're in one of the weaker matrix organizations, you're going to influence all you can. But if you don't have that executive air cover on critical issues, you're fighting an uphill battle of a mountain. You're probably not going to make it. You've got to get that buy-in from the executives, at least one sponsor that will give you backup. I think that's right. It's a critical success factor. It's almost a must-have.
Right.
A colleague of mine once said, if you walk into an organization as a PMO leader and the executives are not on board and you're not getting the air cover, you're out for slaughter. You're really not going to do well. And not to scare anybody, but if you're in an organization where the people above you aren't buying in, or you can't get buy-in, or can't get that air cover, that's probably not something that I would want to fight myself. You might want to look at changing organizations, honestly.
Yeah.
But we don't have that problem, thankfully. I think we've got good buy-in, but you have to go out there and find where you can add value. So to me, the critical success factor is, has the PMO improved the business, right? And so the answer is, and that time span is going to vary. The answer is, you need early wins if it's new. If you're a new PMO leader, you come to an organization, maybe it's doing really well, maybe it's not doing so well. All you want to do is find a time frame that you can get an early win that will impact the organization, so that you have something to point to and say, hey, that's what we did. We can do more of that. Leaders want to know what's in it for them. And so do the contributors. They want to know, hey, if I fill out this piece of paper, how's it going to help? Right? So that's the influencing part. A PMO leader has to be able to pull somebody aside and have that conversation and convince them that what you're doing is the right thing, and you've prescribed it for the organization at the right level, right? You're not inundating them. You're going to say, I just need you to do this one extra thing. And it's just one extra thing. Over time, you add them up, and you'll watch the maturity grow. And I think, like I said, it's a game of inches, right? You're not going to be able to come into a PMO organization that's a weekly matrix, supportive function and change it overnight. You're going to have to get small incremental success and build on that over time. It's a lot like a snowball, right? Rolling down a mountain.
Yeah.
Really small and let it roll. Yeah. And then as it rolls, it just gets bigger and bigger. And then you'll look back after a couple of months or a few years, and you'll see a huge change in the organization if you've done it right.
Yeah, it's the changes that's important. The positive change, a lot of people talk about change, that it has to be destructive at first in order for it to be successful. I think the mindset today is that we need to change, but we don't really need to break things down into small little pieces and be destructive. Is there a way to smooth out that curve a little bit so that we don't have any regression or we drop down in performance? So to me, a PMO really needs to kind of look at the ways, because if you're introducing a PMO, you are changing the organization. You're introducing change for the better, but you don't want to regress. You don't want to see performance drop. You want to see it moving up, like you said, inch by inch without any regression. So that's pretty important. In terms of, I guess the big picture of PMO, I don't think it's for everybody. I don't think that every organization needs one. If you're a small to mid-sized organization, I think that's you got to really look into that. But you said something earlier, to me, a major critical success factor, and something that you have to do to sustain the PMO is that needs analysis. You start out with it, and then 6 months from the time you start, you're going to go back and you're going to check it again, and you're going to check it again. You're going to create relationships with the management that's making decisions as to whether or not they're going to support your PMO going forward. You got to show value, you got to show benefit, and you got to stay in touch. You got to stay connected with them. PMI is talking about what we call the project economy that we have today. Prior to that, I heard a term was called the connection economy. We connect with the customer. So it's probably a combination of all those things. So just in your final comments regarding the PMO and the success of the PMO, let's tie this into the big business perspective. Okay, we're connecting with customers, we're connecting with strategy, we're connecting with the executives, we're connecting with the project managers. Seems like a major challenge. A great opportunity, but a major challenge. How do you keep at it? What do you have to do to kind of keep focused and keep going, even though it's kind of probably an uphill battle, with all the different things going on? How do you deal with that?
So I think the answer is, once you get 90% of that battle over, right, it's that last 10% that costs an awful lot to implement. So I think the answer is sometimes, don't be satisfied with status quo ever, right? But communicate the successes that you've had and set realistic expectations, right? Not all organizations need a, top-notch, full-blown PMO doing absolutely everything in the PMBOK or, every single practice. They need something prescribed that is just enough to add value, but not to, like you said, diminish the return. So once you start growing to the point where you're subtracting value from the organization, stop. It's okay. What you can do is, start over and look at some basics, look at some things that you are doing, see if you can incrementally improve the process or streamline them, make them easier for people to use. Don't worry about, well, I didn't implement, fully blown, risk management with all the bells and whistles. Just look at, well, we're doing risk management, we're doing okay. What can I do to streamline that process and have it take less time or make it easier to understand? Or make it easier to use. Because if you continually are doing that across what you've already implemented, you're going to show benefit. You're going to continue to add value to the organization. You're going to give them back resources because they're not going to take as much effort to do what they were doing yesterday. So like I said, it's, game of inches, right? Every day, look at something you can do to improve. Even if you have all of your policies and procedures in place and you hit that nice mid stride where you say, hey, we're doing everything right. There are no more catastrophes, right? If you're at a PMO maturity level where you feel like, hey, we don't have any problem children programs, that's a wonderful place to be. don't sit on your laurels because things happen quickly. So you're going to have to keep doing what you're doing. But now is where you want to start looking at refining the processes you've already implemented and see where you can take a little corner off here or a little edge off there to smooth things out, make them easier for the next group of people that might use those tools.
Okay, there's one more thing I meant to ask before, and you had mentioned it earlier, and I know that we're probably just about out of time here, but PMOs, methods and procedures, supporting the project managers. One of the things, maybe we can make this quick, is in my opinion, risk management is still not getting the kind of attention that it needs to get in most organizations. Yours being maybe an exception. I mean, you're dealing with things that require a significant assessment and analysis of risk. But generally from an overall PMO perspective and what you might recommend to other PMOs, how do you focus on risk, and what can we do to get the people to pay more attention to it and keep that as part of the culture of the organization?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, we're not perfect. We are struggling with risk, I think, just like any organization is. We happen to be in aerospace, very much like folks in the medical field. So there's a much lower tolerance for risk, right, in our products. So I think our engineering and the philosophies that we have, those evolved, since the early 1900s when we started flying, right? So it's been around for 100 years, the process to develop and design airplanes. So that area of risk, I think, is well defined. But when we talk about project and program risk, we're pretty much in the same boat as everybody else. We take on projects and programs and sometimes have issues. The main thing is you have to educate the entire team, because a good project and program manager can't handle risk all by themselves. I think that's a fatal flaw that I always see in startup PMOs and in new leaders, is they feel like they have to take care of it all themselves. And the truth is, you only have two pairs of eyes. You can't do it all yourself. You can't think of every scenario by yourself. Risk is a team sport. So I think if you're going to be successful with risk, you have to bring everybody in, and you have to train, and you have to expose people to say, look for risk where we didn't realize it was yesterday. That's where the IPT, I think, is a function in aerospace and in many product development teams, is a good area for risk. Is that you can involve cross-functional teams, get as many pairs of eyes and as many brains engaged as you can thinking about risk. And it's a mindset where you have to slowly change. Just like the COVID pandemic, we all wear a mask now, right? It's one of those things that you have to learn to just practice. And if you practice, it becomes automatic. So I think we struggle with risk just like everybody else. But I think the key there is bring in more people than just your PMO, because if you don't, you won't be successful.
Okay, yeah, and remind me of a quote somebody gave me years ago, and it does make sense. He said, risk management is project management, okay? And what we need to get our people is to be, the term was used, contingency prepped, but we really need to be focused on what-if analysis, being contingency prep, looking for alternatives, but risk should always be on the table for discussion all of the time in any PMO. So with that, I think that we've probably used up all of our time and then some. So again, congratulations for your selection for a global PMO award. I mean, that's really in itself a major accomplishment.
Great
I'm
honor.
sure it is, and your company probably is saying, "Hey, this is just great." I mean, we've really come a long way. We've got a very mature PMO. We've got solid people, and we've learned a lot. And here you are, sharing your knowledge with who knows how many people out there that are interested. So anyway, good luck with the award. Good luck with the PMO. And I'm sure that we'll cross paths again sometime in the near future, I hope.
I hope so.
Maybe without the masks and without the social distancing, who knows?
Right.
But
I
anyway,
look forward to that.
That would be great. So enjoy the event. I'm sure people will be asking you a lot of questions about the PMO, and we covered quite a bit in this session, but there's so much more we could talk about. This would probably last another couple of hours. But anyway, thank you again. Good luck, and it's really nice to be part of this overall program. So take care of yourself, and keep that PMO going strong.
Thanks. Take care, everyone.